Chapter 6. In this chapter you will learn injuries on the job, when to work and when not to work, about foodborne diseases, how to handle cuts and burns, how to lift things properly to avoid injuries, what to do in case of choking. Sick call. If you become sick, it's your responsibility to report to the person in charge of information about your health and activities as they relate to diseases that are transmitted through food. Contact your supervisor to call in sick if you have fever or chills, vomiting or nausea, diarrhea, jaundice, heavy coughing and sneezing or runny nose, sore throat with fever, eye discharge, an infected cut or burn, open wounds or boils. Working when sick exposes customers to foodborne illnesses, and it exposes everyone, including coworkers, if your condition is contagious. Remember, if your supervisor clears you for work, but you're taking medication, store it in your locker or in another safe place away from food. Foodborne disease. Foodborne diseases have a major impact on public health. The food employee is required to report to the manager an illness due to foodborne pathogens. It is the responsibility of the manager or the person in charge to report to the appropriate regulatory agency any person who applies for or works in the food service capacity suspected or reported to have foodborne illness. The following are the big five of the more common and serious foodborne pathogens: Salmonella typhi, Shigella, E. coli 0157H7, hepatitis A virus, norovirus. To protect against the transmission of these serious foodborne illnesses to the customers or fellow workers, you must be excluded until cleared by a physician to return to food service work. Foodborne diseases. Salmonella typhi, salmonellosis. Symptoms include nausea, vomiting, abdominal cramps, diarrhea, fever, and a headache. These symptoms, along with the loss of appetite, can persist for several days. Symptoms begin 6 to 48 hours after eating contaminated food. Symptoms may persist for 1 to 2 days longer, depending on the individual. Salmonella bacteria is commonly found in raw meats, raw and undercooked poultry, and eggs, and in unpasteurized milk and dairy products. Salmonella is also found in the feces of animals and people who are infected with the disease. The food service employee who lives in the same household as, works with, or is closely associated with a person diagnosed with salmonella may become infected with the disease through fecal hand-oral contact when proper hand washing and good hygiene is not practiced. Salmonella is not spread by coughing or sneezing. People of all ages may be affected by salmonella bacteria, but the symptoms are most severe for infants, the elderly, and the immune-compromised consumer. Salmonella is a heat-resistant bacteria, making proper cooking temperatures and times very important. Salmonella is killed by thoroughly cooking foods. Food handlers must use clean equipment and properly sanitize work surfaces between tasks to avoid cross-contamination. Always use good hygienic practices, washing hands after going to the restroom, before preparing food. Persons infected with this disease must be excluded from food handling until the illness is resolved. Shigella, shigellosis. Symptoms include bloody diarrhea, fever, nausea, vomiting, and cramps. Those who are infected with the Shigella organism will begin to feel symptoms about 12 to 50 hours after the contaminated food is ingested. Associated foods: salads, i.e. tuna, macaroni, potato, and chicken, raw vegetables, milk and milk products, and poultry. Contamination usually occurs via the fecal hand-oral route, transmitted by unsanitary food handlers. The food service employee who lives in the same household as, works with, or is closely associated with a person diagnosed with Shigella may become infected with the disease through fecal hand-oral contact when proper hand washing and good hygiene is not practiced. People of all ages may be affected by Shigella bacteria, but the symptoms are most severe for infants, the elderly, and the immune-compromised consumer. Shigella is transmitted from an unsanitary food handler through ready-to-eat foods. Excellent personal hygiene and proper hand washing after using the restroom will control transmission of this disease. Avoid cross-contamination, cook foods thoroughly, and store foods at the proper temperatures. Persons infected with this disease must be excluded from food handling until the illness is resolved. E. coli. E. coli attacks the lining of the intestines, causing severe cramping and abdominal pain, watery diarrhea, occasional vomiting, and low-grade fever. The illness usually lasts for an average of 8 days. Some people, most often young children, may develop hemolytic uremic syndrome, HUS, which can lead to kidney failure. Undercooked or raw hamburger meat is the most common vehicle for this disease. Other foods have also been associated with E. coli outbreak, such as unpasteurized milk and apple juice, some fresh fruits, alfalfa, and radish sprouts. The food service employee who lives in the same household as, works with, or is closely associated with a person diagnosed with E. coli may become infected with the disease through fecal hand-oral contact when proper hand washing and good hygiene is not practiced. All people are susceptible to this disease, but the symptoms are most severe for infants, the elderly, and the immune-compromised consumer. E. coli infection can be prevented by proper handling and thorough cooking of beef and beef products to a minimum of 155 degrees Fahrenheit. Monitor grill temperatures with a probe thermometer to ensure temperature requirements are met. Serve consumers only pasteurized milk and apple juice. Wash your hands after using the restroom and do not prepare food until the illness is resolved. Persons infected with this disease must be excluded from food handling until the illness is resolved. Hepatitis A virus. People infected with the hepatitis A virus will usually feel symptoms of fever, nausea, and abdominal pain. These symptoms are followed by jaundice. People infected with the hepatitis A virus may pass this disease along to the consumer via fecal-oral transmission from an unsanitary food handler to an unsuspecting customer. Foods most often implicated with this virus are cold cuts, salads, fruits and juices, milk and other dairy products, shellfish, and iced drinks. The food service employee who lives in the same household as, works with, or is closely associated with a person diagnosed with hepatitis A virus may become infected with the disease through fecal hand-oral contact when proper hand washing and good hygiene is not practiced. This disease is more common in adults than in children. However, everyone who ingests this virus and whose immune system is unable to fight it off is susceptible to an infection. The hepatitis A virus is transmitted from an unsanitary food handler through ready-to-eat foods. The virus can be passed to others when the ill person does not wash his or her hands well after using the restroom and prepares food. Excellent personal hygiene and proper hand washing is very important to control the spread of this illness. Avoid eating raw shellfish. Sharing drinks, kissing, hugging, or casual contact does not spread hepatitis A. Persons infected with this disease must be excluded from food handling until the illness is resolved. Norovirus. Symptoms. Noroviruses are members of a group of viruses called caliciviruses, also previously known as Norwalk-like viruses. Norovirus is also called viral gastroenteritis, food poisoning, or calicivirus. Norovirus infection causes gastroenteritis, which is an inflammation of the stomach and the small and large intestines. Noroviruses are by far the leading cause of foodborne illness outbreaks. This infection is often mistakenly referred to as the stomach flu. It is not related to the flu, influenza, which is a respiratory illness caused by influenza virus. Norovirus is not a new virus, but interest in it is growing as more is learned about how frequently noroviruses cause illness in people. Common symptoms include nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal cramps. Other symptoms may include fever and chills, headaches, and muscle aches. Symptoms usually last 1 or 2 days. However, during that brief period, people can feel very ill and vomit, often violently and without any warning, many times a day. Noroviruses are found in the stool or vomit of infected people. People can become infected with the virus in several ways, including eating food or drinking liquids that are contaminated with norovirus by food handlers who have not washed their hands adequately, touching surfaces or objects contaminated with norovirus and then placing their hand in their mouth or eating before washing their hands, having direct contact with another person who is infected and showing symptoms. Persons working in a daycare center or nursing home should pay special attention to children or residents who have norovirus illness. This virus is very contagious and can spread rapidly throughout such environments. Sometimes certain illnesses can cause food handlers to be excluded from an establishment. An employee who has been diagnosed with one of the big 5 foodborne illnesses by a physician must be excluded from the food establishment. They must go home, and the manager must contact the local health authority. Just remember, diagnosed equals excluded. Other times, certain illnesses cause a food handler to have restricted duties at an establishment. If an employee has symptoms of a foodborne illness, such as vomiting, diarrhea, or fever, they must be restricted from their duties at the establishment. If an employee has an infected sore on their hand or arm, they must be restricted from their duties at the establishment. If an employee has persistent discharge from their eyes, nose, or mouth, such as coughing, runny nose, or sneezing, they must be restricted from their duties at the establishment. Just remember, symptoms equal restricted. Burns. Burns may be caused by heat or chemicals and can be very severe. Immediately place the burned part of your body in cold water. Get to a doctor at once. Heat-caused burns are generally caused by hot oil from deep fryers, hot liquids and foods, steam. To prevent burns by hot oil from deep fryers, cool the oil to 100 degrees Fahrenheit before disposing of it. Do not use plastic containers to store oil unless it's completely cooled. The container may melt and dump hot oil on you and others. Do not drop food into hot oil. It can splash onto you, causing severe burns. Place food in hot oil using tongs or a frying basket. To prevent burns from hot liquids or foods, do not place just washed food in hot oil. The water droplets will cause the oil to sputter and explode and send hot drops into the air. These drops can cause severe burns and can cause a fire. Do not use the deep fryer to heat containers of food. Use dry hot pads or padded mitts when handling hot pots and pans which contain liquids or foods. Wet pads and mitts will get hot quickly and can cause burns. Wear the right clothing. Wear a shirt that covers your neck and arms down to your wrists. Wear closed-toe shoes. No canvas sneakers or sandals. Remove plastic gloves before handling hot pots and pans. These gloves can melt and stick to your skin, causing a severe burn. To prevent burns from steam, when removing the lid from a steam kettle, stand away from the pot. Stand to one side and turn your face away when removing pans from a steam table. The lid should be removed slowly so steam can escape from the back of the lid, and you can use the lid as a shield for your face. Never try to open a pressure cooker unless pressure is 0. Chemical burns are generally caused by sanitizers and cleaning compounds. To prevent chemical burns, use chemicals as directed on the label. If you're not sure of the instructions, be sure and ask your supervisor to explain them to you. Never mix chemicals. They can produce poisonous gases. Be sure that spray bottles for cleansers and sanitizers are plainly labeled and stored away from surfaces where food is prepared. Destroy used chemical containers so they do not get used by mistake for storing foods. Use plastic gloves when handling undiluted sanitizers and cleansers. Cuts. Cuts result from accidents with knives, power-driven equipment, broken glass, and other equipment with sharp edges. Knives. Dull blades can cause cuts because they're difficult to work with. More pressure must be used to cut with them. This can cause the knife to slip. Knives should be sharpened frequently. Use knives only for the special purpose for which they were meant. Knives have their own specialties. There are knives for chopping, peeling, deboning, filleting, scaling, carving, cutting, opening oysters, and many other special jobs. The correct knife for the job is the safest knife for the job. Store knives separately from other utensils. Never leave knives in the sink or in wash water. Someone might reach in and grab the knife unknowingly. Wear mesh gloves when cleaning knives and slicer blades. Power-driven cutting equipment such as slicers, mixers can cause serious cuts and result in the loss of fingers. Use clean, sanitized mesh gloves. It may be against the law in your state to operate power-driven cutting equipment if you're under the age of 18. Be sure and check with your supervisor on this point if you're under 18. Cutting equipment should be sharpened regularly. Do not remove guards and safety switches from cutting equipment. Glass. If dishes are to be washed by hand, do not put them all in the sink at once. This causes heavier dishes to crush lighter ones and can lead to cuts. Do not stack glasses and cups inside each other. They can get stuck, and you can cut yourself as you try to separate them. Never use a glass or dish to scoop ice or ice cream. They can chip into the food as well as cut your hand. Use a separate and clearly marked garbage container for broken glass and dishes. Floors that are greasy or wet or have floor mats that are not well tacked down are the main cause of slips, trips, and falls. Mats should be well tacked down and have tapered edges. Keep floors clean and dry. Don't hurry while carrying heavy loads. Wear shoes with non-slip soles. Be sure to use a good stepladder to reach supplies that are stored above your head. Sprains and strains. Most sprains and strains are caused by lifting things in a way that puts strains and stresses on your body. This can result in damage to muscles, bones, and ligaments. Some damage can be permanent. Heavy items should never be stored any higher than waist level. Keep your back straight and use your legs for power when lifting. Be sure your footing is solid before you lift. Be sure the load is as close to your body as possible when lifting. Don't reach out and lift. Avoid loose, flapping clothing when lifting. It can catch on an object and throw you off balance. Be sure that your shoelaces are tied. Be sure to check the load you are about to lift. Are the handles secure? Is the load balanced? Is the load slippery? Are there sharp edges or protruding nails? Are there loose things in the load that will shift while you're lifting it? If the load is too heavy, get someone to help you. Choking. Step 1. If you think someone is choking, ask, "Are you choking?" Shout help. Step 2. Call for help if victim cannot cough or speak or breathe, is coughing weakly, or is making high-pitched noises. Step 3. Send someone to call an ambulance. Step 4. Do abdominal thrusts. Wrap your arms around the victim's waist. Make a fist. Do not bear hug. Your arms should be held away from the victim. Place thumb side of fist on middle of victim's abdomen, just above the navel and well below the lower tip of the breastbone. Grasp fist with your other hand. Press fist into abdomen with a quick upward thrust. Repeat abdominal thrusts until object is coughed up or victim starts to breathe or cough. If victim becomes unconscious, lower victim to the floor. Step 5. Do a finger sweep. Grasp tongue and lower jaw and lift jaw. Slide finger down the inside of cheek and the base of tongue. Sweep object out. Step 6. Open airway. Tilt head back and lift chin. Give 2 full breaths. Keep head tilted back. Pinch nose shut. Seal your lips tight around the victim's mouth. Give 2 full breaths for 1 to 1.5 seconds each. Step 7. Give 6 to 10 abdominal thrusts if air won't go in. Place heel of one hand against middle of victim's abdomen. Place other hand on top of first hand. Press into abdomen with quick upward thrusts. Step 8. Repeat steps 5, 6, 7, and 8 until airway is cleared or ambulance arrives. Treating injuries. If you find yourself having to deal with an injury, inform your supervisor immediately. If an infection has occurred, you may be reassigned to a job that doesn't involve food handling, for example, working with money. You can tell when an injury is infected because it will become inflamed, red around the wound, or have pus. Do not handle food if you have an infected cut, burn, or sore. If the injury is not infected and you are cleared to handle food, wash your hands, keep the injury clean and bandaged, and wear gloves or other coverings over the affected area.